All About Beer receives underwriting support from Common Roots Brewing Company. They understand the importance of independent journalism in the beer space, and their support helps fund original work. Learn how you can affordably support journalists by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall. Great Lakes Brewing Company turned 38 this year, and the venerable Ohio brewery continues to serve its customers well through a reliable year-round offering and high-performing seasonals. It's also working in the innovation space, trying to reach customers through THC seltzers and low-cal, low-alcohol lagers. Chris Brown, the brewery CEO, will join me in a moment to discuss it all and more. But if you have story ideas or guest suggestions or just want to reach out, you can get me anytime on email at johnhall@allaboutbeer.com. That's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com. And as you know, and as I've been talking about on the show for a while, and every week you hear Andy at the cold open of the shows, but the way we're able to keep bringing original content to the beer industry and to curious beer drinkers is through your support. We've created an affordable underwriting program that's easy on your budget, helps you get visibility, and it's an altruistic way to directly fund writers, photographers, and editors. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more and to sign up today. When you're at our website, poke around. You can read some of the recent articles, you can go back through the archives, and you can tune into other podcasts like Brew to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast and One Iconic Beer. You won't be disappointed. You can follow us on social media at All About Beer to keep up with everything else we have going on. We'll get into the show in a moment, but first, here is a word from this episode's sponsors.
Today's brewers need hops that perform consistently, from pilot scale to full production. LupoCore was engineered to meet that challenge, delivering enhanced sensory performance, reliable dosing, and scalable brewing efficiency in an easy-to-use T90 format. Backed by Haas innovation and sensory expertise, LupoCore helps breweries create impactful hop character with confidence and control. Reach out to your Haas Sales Representative or visit lupohops.com for more information.
Here's a story brewers know all too well. You walk into the brewery straight to the tank. You pull a sample to do a forced diacetyl test and you wait for it in silence. Something feels not quite right. You reach into the water bath and bring the flask to your nose, and it's a butter bomb. The logistics start running through your head. Do we hold the tank? We have accounts waiting. How many days until it clears? And then you wake up and remember that you use Berkeley Yeast Fresh Chico. It's got ALDC inside every cell, so diacetyl never forms in the first place. Through primary, through dry hopping and hop creep, diacetyl stays ultra low. So you don't have to add ALDC or wait for diacetyl to clean up. And most importantly, you don't have to wake up in a cold sweat worrying about production nightmares like these. Fresh Chico is now available in dried bricks for as low as $88 at berkeleyyeast.com.
A few weeks back, I had the chance to stop into Great Lakes Brewing Company in Cleveland. The pub seemed virtually unchanged from the last time I was there a dozen years ago. But upon further inspection, it was clear to see that the brewery was embracing modern drinking trends through some of its newer offerings. There's a low-cal, low-ABV Dort Light, which is a takeoff of their Dortmunder Gold, which is a play to get into the Mich Ultra space. There's fruited wheat beers, there's a hazy IPA, there's more that the list went on and on. Nearly 40 years into its run, the brewery is still setting the pace for beer in Cleveland. Others in the vibrant beer city look to them and follow their lead. Its annual Christmas ale is a juggernaut, and fans celebrate in the colder months, as well as a smaller Christmas in July event. Chris Brown, the company CEO, joins me for a conversation about staying fresh, honoring legacy, and fighting the government over THC drinks. Here's our conversation. Well, Chris, thanks for doing this. I was in Cleveland last week, just in time for the brewery's 38th anniversary. And, you know, there's a good amount of all of you from that class of 88 that is, you know, hitting milestones and still kind of growing and leading the way. And you know, one of the things I was thinking about is, you know, it should be easier after all this time, but it seems like it's not. What's like from where you sit right now? what do you see as the biggest challenge that you have due to the brewery's age?
Due to the brewery's age?
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I think for us, it's a combination of things, right? I think it's um, being relevant to the next set of consumers that have this younger group that has been, shaped and forged by social media, by different interests, by different drinking habits. We have always done really well with those that lead with, that craft is a part of them, or, craft, is their beer of choice. Where, you look at this next group and this, 21 to 30 type group right now, and they're all over the place, and there's things like buzz balls and RTDs or high noons on top of that, that they're drinking wine, if it's this, that's beer, that they're kind of all over the place and overall drinking less. So we have our core consumer, but that core consumer at 38 years old as a brewery kind of is you aging out at some point, right? So for us, we're trying to find some things to keep at the core of who we still are, but also how we meeting the consumer in the current, dynamic of the marketplace and what people are looking for, especially as people continue to drink less and less, based off of, changes in, behavior and attitudes towards alcohol.
sure. And even, I mean, I keep hearing more about the GLP-1 conversation as well.
I think it's that's definitely part of it. I think it's also that the dog, like, if I'm going back to me being 23 years old and in my first job, and they say that the dollars that I have in my pocket for extras, for things that aren't food, rent, etc., are analogous to 20 some odd years ago. The difference is that it's just being cut so much more. Now it's, gaming, and it's I'm online betting, and like that disposable income. There's so many more things to grab at it, and people's priorities have changed. It used to be like, hey, I'm just getting my 12 pack, I'm hanging out with my buddies, and whatever. And now it's, maybe we'll have some drinks, but we're gonna all bet together on this World Cup game coming up, and we're gonna watch that together, and then we're gonna play video games afterwards, which I have, my monthly subscription to, and then I have all my streaming apps. So it really comes down to decision making and deprioritization of that social aspect. There's just so many more options.
So with that in mind, then you sort of alluded to this a little bit, but how is the brewery rising to meet those challenges?
Well, I think that, the biggest thing that I've been talking about to our company, our employees, as well as really, put it out in the last couple of weeks to our distributors, is we are the Great Lakes Brewing Company, but we're no longer just a brewery. We've got to meet the consumer where they're at, and to keep pace with where we want to be and where we used to be, and to find another 30 plus years for this brewery. We have to do other things beyond beer, because of that's the only way to kind of to stay relevant, right? So we're getting into we've done this partnership with Watershed Spirits, and we're going to do an RTD. We got involved in THC, and then that's been legal battles and et cetera and things, and who knows where that goes federally. But I'm even behind the scenes, we're working on potentially being a sales arm for an upstart like canned wine company. We're just trying to be a beverage company, and even looked at things beyond what you would consider in the even NA beer, beyond that, to find things that are relevant, that we can use our distribution partners, but also our expertise in beverages, across an entire spectrum rather than just beer.
Yeah. Is there, I've had this conversation with other breweries in and around, you your age, the brewery's age, where there is that sort of stigma of, oh, this is, now granddad's beer. Which was always, in the very early days of, craft or micro, it was, Bud Miller Coors was granddad. This is for the
Yeah.
kids. And now,
Yeah.
we're hearing that generationally. When you get into RTDs, does does that stick? Does that matter? I mean, it feels like a lot of those drinkers, especially on the younger side, want, you know, the easy, no fuss uh, flavor experience. You mentioned buzz balls. They want a kick. Be that if it's coming from a 19.2 or some other
Right.
sort of packaging or what.
Right.
And it's got to look the part for social media as well. When you get into that RTD space, you, does Great Lakes, quote unquote, jive with that, or are you going in different directions to sort of, yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. I think that what we've done really well here into this space is to stay appropriate to who we are and what expectations are for us. So, our RTD is essentially it's a long drink, right? But we elevated it, right? So we're not using whatever gin or whoever that we're using a craft distillery's four peel gin, which is more unique. We're using only, fresh and, real ingredients with some grapefruit and orange juices. And so we're taking that concept and then going, okay, how do you improve upon it? How do you make it better? But on top of that, we're co-branding this with a craft distillery. We are also using a portion of our proceeds to then fight microplastics with a company that was created in Cleveland here that's helped getting microplastics out of like laundry and et cetera, because I had no idea that that is the number one cause of microplastics in the water and food source. I said, the guy asked me the question. I'm like, I figured it was water bottles. And it's like, no, it's your clothing. I'm like, you're kidding. So, yeah, so we have a cause marketing part of it. We're going to do something better for the earth. We're using a craft distillery who also we have a bunch of respect for, and then really elevating to not just be just another vodka soda or whatever, just thing. We're really trying to create a unique experience with it as well as have a purpose to it.
So, I mean, Lord knows I'm not a marketer, but that sounds like a lot. So how do you convey all of that, while also trying to get the can in somebody's hand, of
Yeah.
better ingredients and, small distilleries and microplastics. And, I mean, I admire all of it. I'm just thinking like, God, that's a lot for 12 ounces of long drink.
Sure. It's easier than you think. Well, I mean, one, obviously you gotta do the marketing behind it and you gotta keep it simple, stupid, right? So just think,
Right.
but for us, what the consumer kind of expects now, especially is make it easy for me. So there's a QR on it that literally takes you to a dashboard where it's a simple thing where it literally goes, here's a running total of how many gallons of water we have done. It's we're not trying to go into the depth of here's the process, here's the thing and stuff too. It's a very visual thing that you'll get the concept within 15 seconds of looking at it. I think the Watershed Spirits app, that's easy. We call it out on the package. But it's still a Great Lakes product, and with the product name being a splash, it's like give me a splash, or think everything relates back to water and et cetera. So I think it's with our marketing materials, with our things, sure, like could someone not, there are probably tons of people that'll purchase it and not have a clue. But I think being succinct on the package and also just kind of having an easy way for someone just to how used to people are now with pulling things up quickly on their phone. There'll be a quick little dashboard that's there that like you can read in 20 seconds and like, oh, okay, that's cool. A lot of people, and then people that really want to go into it can go into depth, but we're just trying to connect, and it's just one more reason to purchase other than, by the way, when I try it, it's awesome, right? So we can do all of these things unless the liquid is great, it doesn't matter.
I like that. I am of the weird generation where QR codes just vex me.
Yeah.
I don't think to use them. Have you seen that people are following through with that? Like,
We
is that
have
part of
with a
it
different
working?
packet. Yeah, we have a similar thing with one of our IPA variety pack because it's just a rotating IPA, and so if they want to know more details on it, like we can't change our packaging quickly enough to keep up with what has to go in there, so we just change the color of the can, and so there's a quick little thing like, hey, this here's the IPA, and it's got this hop, and so we have done that before. In this case, it's also if someone just wants to go on the website, there's a little nugget, quickly of 2 sentences of cleaning up microplastic. I would tell you that one of the better brands at doing that, a lot of people don't realize, is Liquid Death. It's like death to
Sure.
plastic, right? But I don't. How many people do you think actually go through and follow through and like I've had to tell people like, oh, that makes so much more sense. Like, they're a huge brand and people still don't necessarily recognize it, but you're appealing to the 10%, not to the 100. I think people buy Liquid Death all the time because they love the water, the packaging, the product, and that's what we're doing first, right?
Yeah,
What I'm looking for is what's something else to push us past how do I get more jump balls, right?
that makes sense to me. Um, you mentioned THC. Ohio has a complicated relationship with some of those beverages. I
That's
mean, I
my
feel like every
understanding.
state
Yeah.
and then the federal government does as well these days.
Yes. Yes.
But Ohio seems to be a unique case
Yeah.
among the unique cases. Uh,
Correct.
ca- for those who are unfamiliar, and I'm still trying to learn about this, like, can you walk through, the brief thus far history of THC CBD beverages in your state?
Yeah. So I think our
That was
our
such a heavy sigh.
yeah. Well, it's been a lot, right?
Yeah,
And if I've told you, you know, how much time I've spent on this when I mean, we started doing one on campus just because our brewery it's got some wrinkles on it, it's got some age, and to do a NA, which everyone always asks us to do, we don't have the passion, we don't have the space, we don't have the capacity, and then truthfully, not the interest, because if you really look at the non-alc thing, it's really not dominated by anybody in craft, it's other than athletic. It's all dominated by big brands, and even our key distributors are like, yeah, don't do it. Craft breweries, as much as they might try, it's really not working in that particular space.
I've
So
I've
we
I've heard this from other brewers as
yeah,
well in
and so
other
it's like,
states.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's the big thing and everything, but it's like it's to me, it's like when people talk about the rise of Irish whiskey, and I'm like, you mean Jameson? I mean, it's of the when Irish whiskey was going off, 85% of that was one brand, and then but they lump it into one category. Or when cider was doing so well, it was pretty much all Angry Orchard. Sometimes there's just like one brand driving it, and but point being is that so we felt we had an opportunity, like we don't have that, but we could make one just for our gift shop to sell out of the gift shop and have something on campus, because so much of the research showed us that people that were drinking this were not, well, we always assumed that they were like in the NA world, that people were drinking that because they just stopped drinking or were sober. And the fact of the matter is that no, like 85% of people drink those as well as drinking still regularly or doing things. It's an option, like the whole zebra striping thing, right? So we
sure.
just wanted to have something on campus. So, but as a 38-year-old brewery and maybe more, a little bit more conservative. And we were concerned about going to market without guidelines, right? Like the whole issue with THC right now is that every state has its own laws. Some have no laws, and it's a little wild, wild west. And, for a brewery concerned about, making sure that this is going to 21-year-old consumers, plus, that, we spent a lot of time figuring out the process so that we were getting the best stuff. We just felt like there was a lot of things out there that you just didn't know what you were getting, where it was coming from, who was making it. So we felt there was an opportunity there. So we went through, 9 months of additional testing, developed a brand and a line, went through the state and bought our agriculture licenses, sent people to hemp processing, we wanted to be, if we're going to do it, we were going to do it and be excellent at it, right? So once the state came to this SB 56 and then they were putting guidelines and a law behind it, we're like, okay, that's what we were looking for. And so what we did is we waited for that to pass. And it passed through both houses in Ohio with flying colors. Like it was like 6 opposed and the 100 something in the House, and there was like 3 or 4, and then it was like a 90% pass rate, right? So then we like, boom, we hit play. We're like, all right, well, here we go. This was October, so we bought the packaging, we started doing, and we were planning to launch in January. And then in that process of making the product, spending all the money, doing all the things as a two, Governor DeWine line item vetoed the THC products out of that bill because he doesn't care for them, right? And so even though
The definition of buzzkill. Yeah.
yeah, so even though both parties bipartisan passed it, even though this is what obviously with the growth of the thing, their constituency and the consumer wanted, the governor said, and is known for not being a fan of anything within our industry. He line item vetoed it. Well, guess what? We've already made all the product, we've made all the things. And so when I challenged, like this, his answer was, well, they knew it was risky. And I'm like, we did? You just passed the law. Like everybody, like nobody said that there was even his own, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whoever you are, his own party had no idea he was doing this. And it was a shock to a lot of the congressmen and the people we talked to, and they were upset about it, right? So now here we've been selling for 6 weeks. And now it's not only that we can't sell it in Ohio. Now I'm not even allowed to produce it. So even though I have other states to go to, they then took away the capability for us to even make it, which is a huge issue for us. And the way we looked at the THC part, this is just a new category. You have beer, you have wine, you have liquor, and then now you had this THC drinks. It was like this new fourth category that was bringing people back into our category, right? The people who had either, and it was such a wide, diverse group of people. It shocked us how much that it was actually, everyone thinks it's, a bunch of 25-year-olds. It's not. It's, 40-year-old women and 60-year-olds who use it to relax at night because it was a very, very different group. And it was, it was a growth area for those of us, all of us struggling in this particular world. So it was like, hey, here's a different way to do revenue. Let's do it, as once again with excellence. So now, I've got $250,000 that has to be, it's in a storing warehouse in Kentucky. We don't have our main avenues to do it. And then where we sat today there was a lawsuit brought by 10, mostly out of state, as well as Saucy and I think Urban Artifact. And ourselves, Rheingeist, 50 West, Seventh Son, a group of us did not participate in that lawsuit because we've been working with legislators. Like I've gone to the Capitol. We've gone around and spoke to, broken up and went to office to office to office. Bobby Slater at 50 West has been extremely active with everything legislative. So it seemed kind of disingenuous to join a lawsuit while we're trying to get them to overturn what we all felt was a really poor decision by the governor. And his other thing was, well, it's going away anyways. Well, is it? There's all this activity now on a federal level, which is a whole different thing about, and Trump's saying like they want to change it. So the point is, it's extremely volatile. But all we wanted to do was we had planned to sell it for the rest of the year and through November, and then let's see what happens. But
Yeah.
we didn't even get that opportunity. But now with this lawsuit, a federal judge has ruled that what DeWine did was illegal, but now it only applies to those 10 that were involved in the case. And so I'm not aware of how law only applies to a few, not to all. So now we have some questions and some things in there. So you were right. It is a big, um, chaotic uh, thing that really all of us wanted to do was to do exactly what was laid out. Give it regulations, tax it, put it through the three-tier system. We're a regulated industry already. Stop making it this wild, wild west. And by the way, people are still ordering online. They're still breaking all you've done is push people to the borders because you can sell it in Indiana, you can sell it in Kentucky, you can buy it over. So all they're doing is just getting it, and instead of just having it, regulated like everything else in the state getting the taxes and having guardrails on it. There were bad actors out there that the bill got rid of that. So why make it even tougher other than personal bias?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. One of the things that I mean, to sort of just change the conversation, but keep it on THC is
Mm,
I wonder about long-term growth of that category when if the laws get straightened and settled out, right? Because
sure.
I've been trying to wrap my head around this for a while. Beer is a social beverage. Wine can be as well, cocktails, etc. A lot of these, I feel like people are, if they're being responsible, like usually one and done, maybe
Yeah,
two.
right.
And it's also not necessarily something that I've heard yet of like people getting together to go out after work and have a couple of THCs.
Correct.
That kind of thing.
Right.
Maybe gummies are being passed around. There's
Sure.
different things,
Yeah.
but like on the beverage side of things, you mentioned when we first started talking, people are drinking less, and it feels like this could also be a culprit for
Contribute to
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we thought about that and looked at, and even if you just look at the microcosm of our own pub, that's not what we saw. It was really just that people who maybe weren't going to drink beer, weren't going to drink anything, like we were really more catching somebody that was just going to wanting to meet up with friends, but didn't have any intention, but like, well, I'm okay with one of the, like, it's almost like you're bringing in, like, and also a little bit inclusive, almost in a certain way, right? And I agree with you. The on-premise part of it is not the play. It's more of an at-home thing for people as a wind down. I mean, part of our play with this was that ours were like 10 to 30 calories, right? That appeals to more women, more like what people kind of told that soccer mom, and like, hey, I can do this instead of a glass of wine, and I still feel good about myself. Um, so it was really just bringing some people back that we had kind of lost. We also find that people that often drink these, it's more occasion based, and they still want to drink beer or wine or cocktails. It's almost like it's an allowance for themselves because like I'm gonna have this now here tonight because it helps me wind down. I feel better. Like I don't have a hangover in the morning by doing one or two. I sleep better, but then I still want to go social and et cetera. So that's why I was saying it was more just adding a percentage back of people that we had kind of already lost in our categories.
That makes sense. Um,
But you're right, the growth was off. It was mail order and off. There are places that we're doing it on premise, and it's not. It's like when you're a beer bar and you have wine. It's like 3%. It's like the smallest thing. People don't go there, but there's someone who just doesn't like beer, so that 1 out of 20 people getting that. It was really, the the tail end of the what's it called? I'm looking for the of the group, the smaller percentage. So, but there were certain places that said they had a lot of success with it. But you're right, it is not ever going to be a monster growth item on premise. I feel like it was more like it was an at-home product.
Gotcha. Um, so when I was at the brewery last week, I got to try the new Dort Light
Hmm.
that's going on there, and it seems like it's a play for I think what we're seeing in the macro space right now of Mick Ultra sort of running the game these days, and I mean even Corona on some level as well, some of
Hmm.
the larger players. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think so because there's plenty of us who have also done craft quote unquote light beer
Sure.
because like hey by the way we can do that and we can do that with a little more flavor for those that would prefer something different, right? This was to your point, uh, really kind of looking at the time again. I kind of mentioned before that we're not going to do a non-alc. But with so much of the research and so much of the even anecdotal, it's not that a lot of people they're like, they're like, oh well, I'm sober now and I can have a NA beer because those that are in that they only want the 0.0 stuff, right? Because otherwise, so much of the NA still has zero point 0.5, and like I've got a friend or two that do that and they still love a beer, but then like well, they can only drink the Heineken or the Guinness, it's got to be 0.0 because otherwise then they're technically, imbibing alcohol, right?
Sure.
So, but what we found is so many people are using it as like a stopgap. Like it was like, all right, well, I'm going out with friends tonight. I really don't want to have a thing, so I'm gonna have a beer and then I'm gonna have an NA between it, and then I'll have another beer later, and then I only had two beers, right? So for us that Mick Ultra, the calorie thing, all that type of stuff, totally understand that. But what we wanted to do was to do something again that just has more flavor. No slight to Mick Ultra is a monster and stuff too. As someone who actually likes beer, I don't like the taste of it. I
Yeah.
don't, I've chatted before. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I think it's almost like people have convinced themselves to that, but why not give a better option? So for us, what we really felt that we had there was, a lot of people that love Dort, in especially in home markets that, as they get older, what we hear is like, I just can't do that. It fills me up. And then we're hearing, we're doing this, and then it's like, oh, this is great. It's so much lighter. I feel great. And I'm still getting so much flavor. Like they can't believe it's only 2.9. So it's just that option for people to come back into our franchise that you don't have to go to your point to a Mick Ultra or what is the I can't remember what the Corona one is called.
Yeah.
Um, Familiar, I can't remember, but point being is, but yeah, we're that is an application, but it's also really just like, hey, anybody who just wasn't looking to, not everybody wants a 10% or like you said in the 19.2, that's an occasion. There are other times where people are like, God, I'd really just love a beer, but I don't want a lot now. This is also that option there. Or like, hey, I can drink three of these at 2.9 and do 270 calories, and it's like one big, double IPA, and it's taken more time. I've enjoyed it more. So really just looking at it from a full spectrum. I mean, if we ever approached 1% of Mick Ultra sales, we would be rolling it, right? So
Well, so the sales thing is interesting, and I know that there's smarter people than me who understand money better than me.
mhm.
The conversation that I keep hearing from folks is why are lower ABV beers priced
The
the
same.
same? Yes.
I think it's because no, I don't think I know. It's still all the same inputs, and often to pull the alcohol and do the thing out of it, there's actually another. So, from a standpoint of putting it all together, it's the same, right? It just people often attribute higher ABV to, higher price, and then that's usually because you have to use more malt, more hops, more things, right? So it does cost more to make it. But and for an NA or for us with Dort, we're still using all the same inputs. It's still all this, it's just, you're having to do this other step to get it either not for us, non-alc, but to lower. So the cost to make it is really roughly pretty close to the same.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I wonder if I get it. Um, it just seems like that's a tough thing, for some consumers, out there because like they're not necessarily thinking about the process and all of that. I mean, I'm always going to spend, the money on
What you want.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
I'm putting
and
it towards it, but
that's
yeah,
essentially, you're right, but that's really what we find is that has been the amazing thing to me is that like, in my head, I'm like, well, this is non-alc. Why am I paying the same price as that? But the fact of the matter is a lot of them are the same price, if not more. But I think it's because, again, if you're looking at it from a marketing perspective, consumer behavior, people are more apt to spend a little bit more for what they actually want rather than something that they're settling for, right? So, I think whether it be athletic, whether it be, Guinness NA, all that, yeah, they're all line priced at the same spot. For us with Dort, like I said, we're still making Dort, we're still making things. So it's right, the I think we were just too conditioned to go, well, it's low ABV, so it should be cheaper. And it's actually the opposite. It's only the high ABV stuff, to do that. But that could change. That could change over time, and the consumer pushes back. But we're just right now, you're really just you're not seeing that. Like Blue Moon, whatever their light or what, but it's just, same price.
yeah. Um, so Dort is still, as far as year-round beers, top of the list for y'all. But
It's our number one year round. Yeah.
year round.
Yeah.
Uh, but when I was out there, Christmas was on everybody's mind, and you all do this Christmas in July thing, and it seems like it's caught on because just about every other brewery I went to in and around Cleveland also had a Christmas beer on. And
Yeah.
my first thought was, oh, it's because you guys have the house from A Christmas Story in town. And I got very roundly corrected. And it's like, no, it's because of Great Lakes Christmas Ale,
Correct. Yeah.
which is bananas to me. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the beer existed before the movie.
so how big is that beer? How important is that beer?
It is our, uh, so for someone who used to be in the distribution business, I was in a house that had Guinness, right? I always, and I feel like it's analogous for us. If Guinness doesn't hit January, February, March, they have a bad year. If we don't hit October, November, December, we have a bad year. Like Christmas ale is our number one selling product. It's 20, based on 22, 23% of our total sales, right? Um, it is it's a behemoth. And it sells more in 11 weeks than anything else we sell for 52. But when this product, when this brand was originally created, it caught on and it caught on and it grew and it grew and it grew and it just became, known as, it doesn't even matter where you are. People know about, again, we're only in, what are we're about to launch Georgia. That'll make us like 22 states, I believe. Right. So, but people know about Christmas ale wherever they go. Or, when we launched Florida last year, it was because we just had so many emails from, Ohioans and people that had moved to Florida. They're like, why can't I get Christmas ale down here? Why can't, it's the best story that I ever explained when I first took this job and moved here. I didn't really understand the power of the brand. But when I was in a Giant Eagle in line, and it's like middle of November, and there's a gentleman there who's obviously a painter. He's got his overalls on, the paint all over him, and he's got a 6 pack of Heineken and a 6 pack of, I want to say it was Miller Lite in his cart, and he had a case of Christmas ale. Right. And so I'm like, well, that's not something you ever see like that. Someone who drinks those is not usually coming over and having a Dortmunder or a Midwest IPA. You know what I mean? There's something about Christmas ale that people who don't even like beer or don't drink beer regularly over the course of the year or craft beer, they're like, yeah, but it's Christmas ale, right? So it's it just morphed into this thing. It's just one of those those products that continued to grow every year. There were hiccups. There were years that are bad. There's stories of like, oh, it's good this year, like it's bad. They think it's like a vintage, right? And I'm like, it's the same recipe, but you just haven't had it in a 40 some odd weeks, but they're like, oh, it tastes really good this year. Like, oh, like I don't think I'm like, it's like it's pretty close, it's pretty exact, but and then to your point, why does everyone else do it? Because why are there a bunch of other Dortmunder style ales in like because of all the smaller breweries or every other brewery in this marketplace follows our lead to in many aspects to try to take some of that marketplace for us. We're the market leader, right? I mean, I look at one of the other breweries in town, and magically over time, their seasonal lineup is the same as ours. They have a Irish ale when we have Conways out. They have a Mexican lager or thing like that during the summer. They go to an Oktoberfest and then they go to a Christmas. I mean, they're just doing the exact same thing and going, well, it works for them, so let's just but the beauty is for us is that Christmas ale travels to pretty much wherever. We get requests all over the country all the time, and it's just one of those things that it's got its lore, and people just young and old attribute it to the warm and fuzzies in that time frame and having it with friends and family, and it's a gift, and it's hard to overcome those numbers and match or find ways to improve upon those year over year, but yeah, it's we're one of the few breweries that sells more from that we sell more in October, November, December, and then into January, February, than more everyone else is April through September.
I like that. Um, yeah, it was so fun to see around town and sort of this Christmas and July thing, and then to find out that it was you guys who are uh the force behind it.
Yeah,
It's just
we
such a fun
started it.
thing.
We started it back when we were the Guardian sponsor, and just to do like a promo, like at and it was like anything. But then there was so much reaction to it, and people going to the park and dressing up in July, and Santa costumes and elf costumes and ugly Christmas sweaters in the midst of July. People would wait 3 innings just to get one beer. It's like holy cow. So and then from there we just decided, you know what? We're not going to package. There's a lot of people that try to package it and do something like we don't want to lose its specialness. All we do is just give, some accounts, top account, like an option for a keg. We
Okay.
make enough to give one keg. You can do a promo, you can do something, but we don't want it to be something we're trying to drive volume or thing. It's really just more of a, halfway, yeah, we're halfway there type of thing. And then still let it be special at the end of the year. It's not a big volume driver. It's just something fun for campus to do here and for, some top accounts to get some draft and then get it in and out of there and get our regular stuff back on.
Yeah. Um, I'll let you go in just a minute, but I've been asking folks for a while now what I call the green door question. And the premise is on the TV show The Good Place. There's in the final season they introduce a concept of a green door where the characters can walk through it and be wherever they want, doing whatever they wanted. So
Mm.
if we had a green door on our plane of existence and this conversation ended and you could walk through it and be at any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking?
So any pub, any brewery, and then what was the last part? And
Uh,
and people.
yeah, who would you go with and what would you drink?
Um, God, that's a really good question. Um, I think for me, um, there is I am super partial. I'm a golfer at heart, right? Except too, I was a college tennis player, but now I'm a golfer. Like, there's nothing better to me than the pub culture in Europe. And it's, and it doesn't matter if it's just whatever the lager of that country is, or like I was just in Portugal. Like, eh, I love going, with, especially with family or maybe a couple, but my kids are not quite there yet, but over in Europe they are. And just going into that local pub where people kind of congregate, having a beer with people you've really never met before, but like, oh, you're American, so too. What do you think of that? And that conversation that ensues after a great day out on the golf course or a great day visiting, whatever, Lisbon, whatever. Like, I think that sometimes that just gets missed here in the States. And the truth is that I, I don't think I would pick a specific beer. That's like asking me for my favorite movie. It's like whatever, what is the primary local, like probably one of the best beers I ever had in my life was being in Prague, actually, and having a fresh Pilsner Urquell straight from the source.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh my God, that's what it's supposed to taste like, right? And it was just so good. And it's really kind of the heart of, I love the history. So, there's a part of me that would also say Oktoberfest or going to Belgium and, being at some, crazy, sour place. But man, really just a great solid lager from whatever country I'm in, and just some hole in the wall place where the locals hang out. I just there's just some level of longing for that and maybe it's just 'cause I just got back from a family trip to Spain and Portugal, and everywhere I'm like, wow, what's your local thing? All right, give me that, and it's always in the right glassware, and it's always just appropriate for the food, and I wish that we just never. There's certain places that are into that culture, like the brick store, like being all my years in
Oh, sure. Yeah.
the brick store, they just do it right there. Every beer that you get is always in the right glassware. They're paired with the right food. That's the part that I love about our industry that most people don't even see, just because they get a shaker pint of the domestic thing, and it's just about you know volume rather than experience, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, thanks for all the insight. We just covered a lot in a short period, so I appreciate the time and the insight. It was fun being back in Cleveland. I hadn't been in a good couple years, and getting into the pub was good and familiar in all of the best ways. And so, congrats on 38 years, and good luck with everything that's on the horizon.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad you visited. I'm glad Marissa was here to connect with you all, and this was great today. Anytime, and yeah, I mean the challenges are real, and we're gonna try to meet them head on. And as the CEO, I've we got 200, and sometimes what is forgotten about is we got 230 families to worry about here, and we are a small business, and when some of this government stuff regulate, they're just not. They just kind of forget. Sometimes people think we're this huge company and stuff too, and like, we're not. Just because we feel big at home, right? But we're not. We're still a small family business, and I'm hoping to figure out, like, what does the next 38 years look for us? And it's certainly fun trying. And we've got a bunch of dedicated people that want to make sure we make it there.
Who are the breweries you want to hear from? Drop me a line via email. It's johnhall@allaboutbeer.com. You can join the This Week in Rauch Beer group on Facebook, or follow at TW Rauch Beer on Instagram. Upload your photos, join the conversation. You can support us, and I hope you will, by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support. You can go to the website, check out new content as well as the archives. You can also find links for all of All About Beer's social media. Before we run, here's a note from this episode's sponsors. We thank them for their support, and we hope you'll give them your business.
Tim Shasha from Berkeley Yeast here. When I was the director of brewing at Cellarmaker, there was a time when I was really wrestling with hop creep and diacetyl. I'd be dumping liters of ALDC into the tank, at knockout, at dry hop, before cooling, just hoping that it would work. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. That's when I reached out to my friends over at Berkeley Yeast. I was like, why don't you just put the ALDC in the yeast? And the next thing I knew, Fresh Chico was born. Just like that, all my hop creep woes were gone, which was really cool. But an even bigger thing I noticed is that when I switched, all my beers were popping more. And that's when I figured out that diacetyl doesn't just mean butter. It was also dulling the brightness and intensity of my hops, masking those flavors even when D was below threshold. For me, Fresh Chico was a life changer. And now that you can get it dry, it's easy to use and competitively priced. It's the full package. Find out more at berkeleyyeast.com.
This episode is sponsored by John I. Haas on their new LupoCore Enhanced T90 hop pellets, engineered for peak sensory performance and ultimate peace of mind. Designed for brewers of all sizes, LupoCore delivers consistent sensory outcomes, reliable brewhouse performance, and scalable application across production volumes. Using Sensory Plus selected hops and Haas's advanced pellet processing technology, LupoCore elevates hop expression while reducing brew process loss, all without requiring brewers to change their process. Contact your Haas Sales Representative or visit lupohops.com to learn more.
If you like smart audio content, a reminder, All About Beer has a separate podcast channel. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Listen to shows like Brew to Brewer, which is now a weekly show, the All About Beer podcast with Em Souter and Don Tess, and the One Iconic Beer podcast with Jeff Allworth. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, coming to you from Charleston, South Carolina for the next couple of weeks. And the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.